screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll do our annual financial presentation as we do every year for the supervisors. I sent them out a week ago to the supervisors so they can kind of thumb through it. And I kind of know when you go through these financial statements, they're 80 some odd pages long. They're very confusing. Sometimes you got to be it's like a CPA or an accountant to understand these financial statements. They're a lot more complex than your towns. The county is being the size that we are. We have to be fully compliant with GASB, with all GASB 34 and down the road. Normally, your towns don't really get into that type of financing with your financials. We, as a county that's got to go out to bonding consistently, have to be compliant not only with our rating agencies, but also with the state controller. So just bear with us. We'll go through it. If you have any questions, we'll certainly answer. But the first thing I want to do is really go to page 4. Okay. Page 4, what we call the management discussion analysis. That's what we, the county, put together ourselves, not our auditors. Any institution can say what they want in their management discussion analysis. And I always put this in here about GASB 34, that I think 34 has gone beyond and has become far too complicated for the average person or taxpayers to really comprehend. And we see government financial reports as much more confusing than clear. And the thing with GASB, it was supposed to be clear. So that being said, that's how I feel about this. Okay, it's not necessarily the opinion of Matt Vanderbeck and his company. That's how I feel about the GASB 34. To make it simple, though, I'm going to skip really to page 19. What we call governmental funds. This is all MD&A. And page 18, okay, is what we call governmental funds. And this is where we come basically to cash basis of projections for their statements. It's not the GASB 34 and beyond what we call net assets and so forth. But this is on a cash basis. And this is really true representation of what the cash is in the county and what its profitability was for the year. So going down to here, okay, right here, net changes in fund balance. Okay, you can see that the county had a very good year in 2020. Now, 2020 was a COVID year. Okay, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we look at the budget versus actual, but it was a COVID year. And as the board made its decisions to cut in expenses and do its payroll furloughs and everything like that, because our uncertainty, what was going to happen with revenue and sales tax, we had to act. And that's what turned out to happen. Okay, so, county had a very good profitable year, particularly with its revenue streams, with sales tax and so forth. So we are showing, and as this is an audited number, of $2.8 million in the general fund, which is probably one of the highest surpluses that we've had going forward. And then our non-major funds or other funds, which would be the highway and the machinery funds, had a $1.7 million surplus, again, for the same reasons of COVID, cutbacks and so forth. The $6.6 million here, that's the capital fund, and that's all timing, okay? Because we do put out expenses, and then as you'll see tonight, we're doing a bond resolution for $5.2 million to catch up and pay for some of those expenditures. So that's really a timing issue. And all you need to do is really look at what's in the general fund and what's in our other major funds. There is what we call a worksheet to wrap around, which is really right here.
Ron, can you make it bigger for some folks? You're not full screen. Sorry.
How's that? But
Patsy, is that better for you?
I can't go that big though, so we'll see.
That's good.
That's good. Okay, so here again is the surpluses that I was talking about, the 2.8 and 1.7 in our general fund. There is what we call a cash or reconciliations, where it basically takes your fund balance. This is our fund balance in the governmental funds of 20.1 million, and that's that number right here. And then it wraps around. Now, when we get in GASB, now you're talking about capital assets. Now you're talking about long-term debt, which are bonds and so forth. Now you're talking about post-employment benefits, okay, compensated absences, liabilities, and so forth. Our pension liability by the state pension funds. All those things have to be reported in the GASB format that I know you guys aren't used to seeing on your internal formats, but we again have to do this. Workers' compensation funds and so forth. And by the time you net it all out, when you look at what we call a net asset, the county has an unfavorable cash position of almost $70 million. And we're not alone in this. Any municipality, big municipality, is showing these huge things, particularly with what we call OPEG, which is the post-employment benefits and pensions and so forth. And same thing with school districts and so forth. That's why I refer back to the governmental funds, which is a true operation of your business going forward on a cash basis for that. I'm going to jump real quick to page 66. And this is our budget versus actual. So these are actual audited numbers on our budget and so forth. So we have the final budget, and then we have our actual number right here. So you can see overall, we were pretty close to target on budget. So we're like 0.4%, less than 1%, 0.4% within budget. And some of the outliers I'll show you right here is that sales tax and mortgage tax were very good to us. So even though we had projected 45 million, we ended up with close to $49.92 million. But as expected in COVID, a lot of our department revenues were down accordingly. And along with that was state revenues, as you know, with COVID. So sales tax and mortgage tax really counted for making up the shortfalls there because of COVID there. Now with expenditures, all right, don't forget in expenditures, this is where we cut 20% back on our department heads. We did the 15-day furlough, salary and so forth. And that showed very positive favor here when you come to public safety, when you come to health, which is public health, and economic assistance. And that's really the bulk of that is DSS. So we were way under budget because of all those cuts that we took advantage of during COVID and so forth. The only thing that we were over budget was really right here. And a lot of that was, most of that was health insurance. And that health insurance is really because of COVID expenditures. And we're going to get into that a little bit later when we get into the ARPA funding. We're going to allocate some ARPA fundings towards our COVID expenses and health insurance. And later on in the month, when we do our budget workshop, you'll see how that our health insurance expenses has gone up because of COVID and so forth. But overall, the county had a favorable position of budget of $4.4 million. And that all led to that surplus of almost $2.8 million going forward. All right. That's all I got to say. So Matt, you can jump in and do your thing.
Okay, Ron.
Can you share the screen,
Kelly,
Matt?
Yeah. So Kelly, if you want to exit this,
you need to stop, and then Matt can bring it up. What he needs to bring up.
All right. I stopped sharing mine, Matt. You can bring yours up.
Yep. I'm just working on it now. Okay. So you can see the financials.
Yes.
Okay. So I think Ron went through some of the key statements already just right now. So a few of the points I was going to make is he's already made. So we're on the same page there. I know that. What's that, Ron?
That's good.
Yeah, so I remember from last year's presentation the key areas to focus on. So I have I bookmarked a few pages to go through with you. So before I get into the detail, I did want to just give an overall assessment of the audit. So we're presenting the 2020 audit today. Um, the audit overall went well. I've commented in the past, and I'll comment again this year, that the team, your accounting function and finance people are well versed in the preparation of these financial statements and the audit process. There's good communication, and the audit process goes pretty smoothly. And we pretty much did the audit remotely this year. And we're successful in doing that and had no issues in carrying out the audit. As far as when we do the audit, we look for things to correct and things that need to be changed. And I would say on that line as well, that we had very few items that we brought to management's attention. And again, that brings the audit process, or allows the audit process to work more efficiently. And hopefully you won't see that there's any significant surprises from your perspective. So I wanted to just, again, thank the group and give you an overall assessment of how the audit went. Also, from an opinion standpoint, our opinion is the same as what it has been in the past. It's we have an unmodified opinion for the county. I would say overall, we give opinions for each fund that you have. I'm going to just show this. This is the opinion page. It's the same as what we've had before. The one discussion that it's just basically been something in the report for several years now. And that's why we have to show that there's a qualification for two of the funds. The only qualification is that you have this Tobacco Asset Securitization Corporation, which the accounting rules say to combine in a certain way in the way that they're presented. The county chooses not to do it that way because they believe that that presentation is really not as useful as presenting things the way that you do in these financial statements. But this is the same that we've had before, and for several years, this one qualification exists. But this is our report. And to explain to you what that means, just so you can see it, the Tobacco Asset Securitization Corporation is included as a component unit outside of the government, the primary government. And I'm gonna talk about this overall in a minute. But you can see these tobacco settlement bonds. What the standard is basically asking us to do is to put that column in the first column. And the presentation here breaks it out separately so it doesn't commingle the task with the primary operations of the county. So that's basically what we're saying in our report. It really comes down to pretty much this liability that's sitting on the Tobacco Asset Securitization Corporation's books. Okay. When Ron was explaining the fund accounting and the governmental fund, that goes back to, you have a governmental fund balance sheet. So when Ron was saying pretty much on a cash basis, I mean, that's in effect what it's stripping out are a number of those liabilities that have to get picked up for financial reporting purposes, such as the future obligation that you have to fund for the post-retirement benefits and pension plan, things like that. Future debt service.
Matt, before I go back to the tobacco securitization thing there, to make that real simple, what we're saying is that we do not recognize that as a liability because those bonds were issued by the state of New York, and it's the state of New York's due diligence for those bonds, not the county. And in the last page, on page 76, we've had since 2013 an opinion letter from bond counsel or from Tom Myers stating exactly that he agrees that these are not our liabilities and it's the state. That's why they're out of this. Now, we just don't conform with GASB, as Matt says. We disagree with that. And we got documentation and a letter from bond counsel to back that up.
Yeah, and it's included in your financial statements. It's just the presentation of the fact that it's in this one column versus this column. So I just wanted to point that out. So if you look at our opinion, it looks like we have something that indicates we have a difference. I just wanted to point that out to you so you know it's isolated only to this one item. So you know that. Now, what I was saying with the government budget, or not the budget, the overall balance sheet. When you look at these assets, you can see at the end of 2020, you had $14.7 million in cash, $57 million in assets. And your fund balance was $21.1 million. In the general fund, $15.7 million was unassigned. So that's your fund balance, very positive. Now, going back to what Ron referred to before with these GASB conversions, you go from a positive fund balance of $20 million to a negative fund balance of $70 million. And I just wanted to point this out to you. I know it gets to be a little bit confusing, but I just want to spend just 1 or 2 minutes on this page. What is happening here is all of the liabilities that are future obligations are being put onto your books. And when you add all these liabilities, that creates a negative effect to your fund balance. So in the short term, you don't need to worry about funding this in your upcoming year. But GASB requires you to put all these obligations on your books. And I'll show you in a minute, the current year impact of your pension obligation was very significant. The current liabilities that you see here actually represent the amounts that you're expecting to pay in the upcoming year. So when I say upcoming year, it's 2021. I know we're in November already, but you would have made these payments. These would have been expected in 2021. And you can see here for your pension obligation, you had a payment of $6.7 million that you would have made during 2021. That's your cash outlay compared to the fact that you have a liability on your books for the future of $36.9 million. So that's where I just wanted to explain this. This is the statement of net position, which takes everything for the county, puts it together, and applies all the GASB statements, which is that is a non-cash situation. I wanted to next just show you to kind of elaborate on these obligations. If you look at the roll forward of these obligations, your serial bonds, for instance, you actually paid them down during 2020 of about $3.1 million. So your bonds, which are those obligations you have to pay in the long term, you paid in the current year $3.1 million on those obligations. And then you can see the impact of your post-retirement healthcare obligation. That obligation, due to an actuarial calculation that is done, increased your obligation by $17.8 million just this 1 year. So that impacted and had to be put on your books. That's how large that obligation was just for 1 year, to increase that obligation. Your pension obligation went from, that obligation shows that it went up $31 million. So when you look at some of these amounts, they fluctuate due to the actuarial assumptions that are put together. And I wanted to just show you what I meant by that here. This just shows you for your pension plan, based on the current discount rate, it calculates an obligation of $43.6 million. If you increase the discount rate by 1%, that, just to show you how sensitive it is, that decreases your obligation to $10 million. And if you decrease this one assumption by 1%, it could double to $80 million. So when you look at these footnotes and look at some of these assumptions, that's why you can see significant swings on those GASB adjustments that are done each year and reflect the statement of net position. And that's why when Ron is going through the results for the year, and basically that was how I had the beginning of the presentation, the focus really is on the governmental funds and looking at the results, because that strips out all of these other estimates and assumptions that are being looked at for the future. For subsequent events, Ron mentioned the American Rescue Plan. As a subsequent event, you did disclose the fact that you were allocated the $11.5 million. So since 2020, any significant events that would have occurred in 2021 through our issuance date, which was October 18th, we would disclose that here. And I just wanted to point out to you that information was disclosed in the statements as far as your award for this past year. Now, in the back of the financial statements, you'll see a report on government auditing standards. So I showed you our report for the financial statements when I started by providing whether or not you're complying and presenting information in accordance with accounting standards. This report is our looking at your internal controls. We don't necessarily, and whether or not we've identified any compliance issues. So as it pertains to the financial statements, and what we had this year, we had one item that popped up, which I said in the beginning that the audit was clean and we really didn't have many adjustments. We really had just one adjustment of note, and it had to do with just timing and cutoff of making sure that you have all of your revenue recognized in the right period. And in some cases, you may have a capital project that's funded by a government grant or certain types of funding on behalf of the county, and you incur those expenses. But sometimes that type of situation may exist, and you need to remember to also accrue the revenue to make sure that you match the revenue with the expenses. And given the size of the county and the number of contracts and complexity that you have, it's very possible something could fall through the cracks. I think the amount that we had here was not considered that significant. It was corrected by management. But the point here is that we just wanted to draw attention to those charged with governance, which is this body here, that emphasis should be placed on this in the future, just to make sure nothing kind of falls through your internal control procedures going forward. So in this report, that's the only thing that we had found in our testing that we did. Otherwise, again, we had a clean audit. And I have no other management letter comments or anything to present to you. I think, that was the key points I wanted to cover with the group.
The bottom line is that we had a good year and our fund balance has increased. I just want to share yourself with someone. We had a Moody's review, PJ and I, because we had this bond issue that you guys are going to be voting on tonight. And Moody's issued their statement. And this is, everybody see my screen?
Yes.
This is dated just last, Tuesday we did this? Okay. And it says, this is summary. This is Moody's. Okay. Columbia County has a AA3 issuing rate, which is excellent. Benefits from continuing increase in county's financial position driven by conservative budgeting practice and strong sales tax resulting despite going on with the COVID pandemic. Additionally, the county maintains a strong regional economy, conservative financial management. So I'm going to stop sharing the scene. They reviewed these financial statements that we just went over, and they're coming out with the same conclusion that the county's financial position has increased, its fund balance has increased, its cash has increased, and we maintain. We're on the borderline. We asked them to even increase our rating from AA3 to AA2, and they were teetering about that. So I think some of our goals, PJ and our goal, is maybe to get to that next year to have a AA2 rating, which is superb for that. So county is in really good financial state. And that goes a lot when we go to sell these bonds tonight that we're doing a resolution. That goes a lot when investors look at that and look at that rating, okay, and helps your interest rate, okay, because you're going to have a lower interest rate because of your strong financial position when you issue these bonds. So it's all good.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but basically, if it wasn't for jumping on the expenditures and the chairman putting together this financial committee early on in the pandemic, we probably would not have had such a good financial statement at the end. In addition to that, it's important, especially for the new supervisors, to know we did hold back our pension payment last year. So that we wanted to make sure that we had enough cash on hand to make sure that we met our obligations. And we did that, hence the increase in the cash position. But this year it's anticipated we paid our pension payment in February. In addition, we are anticipating to make the payment again in December. So in 1 year, we'll be paying out about $12 million in pension payment compared to your normal $6 million. So I know everybody looks at the sales tax and says we're doing a good job, but just remember, we're going to pay $12 million this year compared to $6 million in a normal year. So that will have a impact on cash flow. We'll be doing a cash flow presentation to make sure that we're able to do that at our finance committee meeting at the end of this year, or excuse me, end of this month. The last thing is that New York State comes out with a fiscal stress category every year. And Columbia County had no designation this year or for 20, which was no designation means we're very strong. That's it. I know we're at 7:15.
If I could just interject for a minute, this is Art Basson. I want to just say that 10 or 11 years ago, I was on the committee that hired Ron Campanera as our controller. And I think the Board of Supervisors at that time did a great thing for the county to hire Ron. And Ron, you've done a terrific job and we're going to miss you. And I don't know who your replacement's going to be, but that person has big shoes to fill. And hopefully you will help that person through the transition because we need your help. And thank you, Ron, for a great job over the last 10 or 11 years.
Thank you, Art. It's been a pleasure.
I thought his retirement was declined.
Who said that?
Collins,
We're not-
Chatham.
We're not going to let him go that easy. So, anybody else have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say when COVID hit and we were really struggling for cash flow, it's amazing to see where we ended up out of this thing. Thank God. So it worked out well after all.
Yeah, we got a good team though.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you. And PJ.
Yep. Thanks,
All right.
Ron and PJ and the team.
Great team.
Okay, on to the next meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Oswaldo, you can go live.
Ready to go, Kelly?
Yeah, ready to go.
Okay, I'd like to call the Special Finance Committee meeting together. And we're going to start with resolution number 403, 2021. Request for the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to issue premium pay payments to the employees of Columbia County.
I'll move that.
We have a motion.
Second, Gary.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Resolution number 432, 2021, a resolution ratifying the terms of memorandum of agreement between the County of Columbia and the Columbia County Sheriff and Columbia County Corrections Officers Benevolent Association, Inc., and authorizing and directing the chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors to execute a collective bargaining agreement for the term of January 1st, 2020 through December 31st of 2023.
I'll move that, Gary.
Second, Rick.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I just wanted to know, this is the contract that Elena briefed us on at the last full board meeting.
Yeah.
Right. Authorization to distribute the mortgage tax monies collected in the office of the county clerk.
I'll move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else?
That's it.
If not, I need motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Scalera.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? See everyone at 7:30.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, Kelly. See you, Cal.
Ready, Oswaldo? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Let's please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance to
flag
the
of
flag
the United
of the
States of
United States of
America,
America,
to the republic for
to
which
the
it stands,
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. I'd like to request the clerk call the roll.
Basson,
Here.
Weigelt, Leader,
Here.
Benvenuto,
Here.
Stats, Adams,
Here.
Metler,
Here.
Collins,
Here.
Riley. Supervisor Riley,
I'm here.
Eldridge. Oh,
I'm
did I hear?
here.
Okay.
That was quite an entrance.
Is Riley
That
here?
wasn't me, but I could do that, you know.
Eldridge,
I'm
She's here.
Yes.
Geary,
Here.
Kirsten,
Here.
Ligonia. Sterling,
Here.
Mia. I thought I saw Supervisor Mia on.
I'm staring at him.
I'm looking at him.
Okay.
Yes, I'm over here.
Just here.
Chamitas,
I'm here.
Mussman,
Here.
Scalera,
Here.
Desi,
Here.
Hoatling,
Here.
Morel,
Here.
Not,
Here.
Skoda.
Present.
Okay, just want to confirm Ligonia is not on, Stats, and Weigelt, just in case I missed anybody. Okay, 2995 present, 540 absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion to pay the bills, accept the treasurer's report, and file the minutes within the clerk's office.
So moved.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, I'm going to need a motion to go into executive session to discuss labor negotiations.
Move it.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Holding, was that you making the
Yeah,
motion?
sorry. I move it.
Okay. Second,
Scalera.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we got to give Oswaldo a minute. Okay, I think Elena and Michael jumped off, but I wanted to thank them for their hard work. For the record, as well as Ron Campanera and our negotiating committee of Mike Benvenuto, Rick Scalera, Sarah Sterling, and Robert Bury for their hard work on this. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Next, I'm going to ask Ron and PJ to, we had a request from Supervisor Holding to review the ARPA funding. And so I'm going to ask Ron and PJ to do that.
Okay. All right, present.
And I know Ron sent out the draft to everyone in advance, so you had a chance to look at it.
Okay, everybody see it nice and big?
Yep.
All right. First, let's say we've got quite a team on this ARPA funding, made up of a lot of supervisors, a lot of department heads, myself, PJ, Bob Gibson, Dan Amasi, even Mike Tucker's on this committee, quite a few supervisors.
Michael
And
Reardon.
I think we probably met, Jesus, I bet you over 20 to 25 times on this over the last several months and come up with this plan. And it's a draft, it's a working plan, and it changes every now and then as we come in. We also hired a consultant from Bonadeo to make sure we're on the right track and doing the right things too. So we've categorized it basically in 6 categories. And the first one is what we call revenue loss. Now, I know some of your small towns might not have this revenue loss, but county does. And it's basically driven from a formula that looks all your revenue for past couple of years and projects out what your revenue loss would be. And our projection on that formula comes out to be $5.1 million. And this revenue loss is really unrestricted. And what that means is that the county can use it for anything that it sees fit. Okay, so it's not really tied into certain strings that the government has put into play for some of the other things. So we can use up to $5.1 million of revenue loss. So what we've allocated it for is for the OFA kitchen, $1 million. And, you know, we'll have a project. I know Ron Knott's working on this and Supervisor Lagonia out of the committee and Kevin McDonald and myself are kind of working on putting together a new OFA building and kitchen out in our Commerce Park. So we're allocating $1 million of ARPA funds for that. And that would be combined with what we can think about getting about $2 million from the state funding in the grant and possibly another $500,000 from the feds on that towards that project. So overall, we can probably allocate $3.5 million of funding towards that project. Next is solid waste. For some of the projects out there, we allocated $500,000. Security upgrades, okay. And PJ, you know more about security upgrades, PJ.
Yeah, that's really our MIS department, upgrades to the telephone system and some backup software that they need for security purposes, both at 911 and other departments.
Okay, and next is the highway roof with solar for $750,000. And that has to do with some of the bonding that's going to be presented tonight for 1.3 million. That's for Smart Watt again to help out with 560 and the highway garage. Ron Knott, you're on. You can explain a little bit about that.
Yep, so we've got phase 2 of the energy project that we did out at the jail. We're looking at upgrading all of the utilities in both 560 and PJ's office, the treasurer's office, and as well as lighting and some window work and stuff like that. At the highway garage, we're trying to install a new roof with solar. That solar installation is right now is estimated to generate the county $20,000 a year in revenue going forward. So that should, as well as fixing our roof at the same time. So that should be a good project.
Number 5 is COVID health insurance cost of $1 million. We have already identified well over $1 million of COVID-related costs in our health insurance, and that's part of the reason why our health insurance was over budget, was related to COVID costs and so forth. But we're going to allocate $1 million, and you'll see when we do the budget presentation workshop for the supervisor how that plays into the 2022 budget going forward. Same thing with the budget cuts for our outside agencies and equipment that we cut in our 20 budget, 21 budget. We're going to restore those in our 22 budget, and we'll see how that works again when we do the workshop going forward. Our next category is premium pay, which you've learned about tonight and just passed a resolution, or you will be passing a resolution for the $550,000 on premium pay going forward. Number C is what we call community partnership and public health. The first piece of this is the homeless detox transition to help the homeless and detox for the community of $1.5 million. I think, we got to work on how this is actually going to transpire and what's going to take place and how this is going to work in. But again, you got Bob Gibson, DSS, working on this, and some of the supervisors following this through and how that's going to work. Number 2 is we're allocating $400,000 to our 24/7 mobile crisis team, and this is 2-year allotment. And this is shared with Greene County. They're going to share 50% of the project cost for this. And PJ, I'm going to let you explain what this is too going forward.
Yeah, you've heard all about basically from a mental health crisis. We have what I call our frequent flyers. Mental health refers to them as heavy users. These are people that repeatedly are stressing our emergency rooms in the county and our EMS in the county. And these people have been bouncing around from mental health to different departments to DSS, so on and so forth. What we've been working with, we've been actually working with Chief Moore from HPD, Dan Amasi from Mental Health, and Bob Gibson from DSS, as well as others, to come up with a mobile crisis team, which is already in place. They're actually funded a certain portion of the week, not 24 hours a day. We've actually concluded that they are not needed 24 hours a day, but what they're going to look at would be putting 2 additional staff members on that would interact with these individuals every day, maybe multiple times a day, to satisfy their needs as far as whether it's clothing, shoes, food, whatever, shelter, in the hopes of deferring some of the crisis intervention, which has been going on now. From HPD alone, and talking with Chief Moore, their cost alone over the last several years in dealing with some of these people just in the city of Hudson is approaching $1 million.
So this is just a small part of what we've been working with Cheryl Roberts, who's put this task force committee together. As PJ mentioned, you got our team from Columbia County, but you got input from the hospital, you got input from school districts and so forth. I'm pretty excited about being a part of this team for not only the county itself, but outside the county and so forth going forward. So this is just a small piece of what that project is going forward.
Yeah, and Ron, the city of Hudson, the mayor's indicated they'd be willing to participate as well, correct?
Correct on that, yes. At the last meeting we had, Mayor Hudson did say he would be willing to fund some of this out of his ARPA funding, which is good. Number 3 is home care OFA. This is what Kevin McDonald is working with home care and for office for the aging, and we're kind of allocating $500,000. That could be, I know 1-year cost is exceeding $100,000, and depending upon how many applicants we get and so forth, we'll see how that goes over the next couple of years. Number 4.
Ron, if I could, this is the Office for the Aging actually hiring
Yeah,
not
PAs.
healthcare workers, but home aides to help people in their homes. It has nothing to do with the pilot program that we had talked about.
Yeah, he's got grant funding on that too. Small business grant, $1 million. We're working with Mike Tucker, okay, on how this would be distributed. And these are grants. It has to be grants. It can't be loans, according to the bylaws and so forth set forth by the government. And again, we're working with DC and Mike Tucker, who's part of this committee and establishing that. Number 5.
Ron, before you do that, I talked to Mike Tucker yesterday,
Yep.
and he's actually refining a proposal to bring back to our committee on how to spend that. He has an actual idea, and I told him to put it in writing and then to come to, talk to the committee about it.
Has he got a number, Matt, or is he going to give us a number?
I think he'll give us, I think it's within what you have there.
All right, that's good. Number 5 is COVID booster shot staffing. That's with working with Jack Mabb. And this is ongoing right now. And he's keeping a track of how much cost it is for the booster shots and the staffing. And we're allocating $100,000 to cover those costs. D is infrastructure, number 4. And again, we're working with Mike Tucker on number 1 with broadband, and we're allocating $1 million towards that. And Mike will come forward with that too, with the plan and how that's going to happen. Matt, you got more to add on the broadband?
No, other than, I mean, they're, been working with the consultant. I think actually John Riley or Rob Bury might be able to add something.
Matt, we're heading to phase 2 of the consultancy. We identified the missing areas. Now we're identifying costs to fill in those areas in the second phase, and how we can go about getting funding at the state and federal level to supplement the allocation you're making this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
2, not number 5, but we're looking at the possibility of building a Commerce Park water tower up at Commerce Park. And this is just an estimate of 500,000, probably going to be more than that in the long run, but it's just a plan. Now, you got to remember, this plan is a draft, okay? It doesn't have to be cast in cement or anything like that. And when we submit it to the feds, that's basically an understanding, as long as you have a good understanding of the draft, and that's what this is. It's a work in progress as the weeks go on. Next section is what we call public safety. And we're going to allocate $600,000 of relocating our 911 center, which is basically right now it is in 610. And we want to relocate that up to our new fire training tower and facility that we have in Commerce Park. And that's pretty good number right there. We got an architect working on that right now. And that'll probably be about that $600,000 to do that relocation from 610 over to our public safety. Ron Knott, you got anything to say on that? I know you're involved in that.
Yeah, so that was an idea that we had back when we did the fire training classroom building over there, that someday we would do 911 backup. One of the important things that is we talked earlier about the OFA kitchen. If we did an OFA kitchen with offices out there and relocated staff from the 325 out there, and then we could move the 911 backup out of 610 State Street, move some staff around. I think in the future we can look at getting rid of both 610 State Street as well as the Philmont kitchen, put them back on the tax rolls, and get rid of some buildings that cause some problems. So.
Number 2 under public safety, EMS allotments, 250. PJ, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's basically like the premium pay that we're allocating for our employees. We had talked about there's no more people that were on the front line as much as the EMS agencies themselves. And so we plugged a number in there, but we're working on a formula on how to distribute that.
And number 3, we'll go along with number 1, is upgrade our equipment in 911, which would approximately be about $750,000.
Yeah, they have a computer-aided dispatch system in place now, but it's outlived its useful life. It's going to cost about that much to be replaced.
CAD system.
Yep.
And the last F is anything that we put towards, let's say, our consultant from Bonadale, Carl, his fees are definitely something that can be reimbursed or gather ARPA, as well as Elena and all her fees that she put together with coming up with working together with us on the premium pay. This number right there. Those fees can also be included in ARPA funding. So again, all that totals is 11.5 million, and that's our allotment for the 2 years. And again, I can't expect, this is a work in progress thing, and it changes monthly as we go forward and so forth. PJ, explain though, we got half of it and we got up to how many years to spend it and so forth.
Yeah, basically we've got 5.7 so far. We should be expecting our second shot about May or June of this year. You have to commit the money by the end of December 2024, and you have to spend the money by the end of 2026. So you do have time. We're putting a lot of thought into this process. And like Ron says, it's a fluid process, especially that number in the beginning. The amount of revenue loss will change. That was basically based on from the year 19 to 20. But also if our revenue does not increase 4.1% between 20 and 21, that number can change as well. So it's a matter of, where you want to use the money and to make sure that it's, that it fits the rules and regulations.
There is good news for your towns that there is federal legislation pending that probably will pass that's going to allow your towns to use a good portion of your ARPA funding as revenue loss, which means you're going to have also the ability of having funds unrestricted to what you can use it for. And there's a good possibility that's going to pass. I know, PJ, you've been working with Carl on that too, and it's probably going to come to light, I'd say within a month.
Yeah,
something
there's a bill in place now. It looks like it's going through. The only other comment would be the outside agencies where we've allocated 400,000. Those agencies have to be vetted to make sure that they didn't receive any other COVID reimbursement. So we can't duplicate.
All right, questions?
Supervisor Hoatling was first.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to thank everyone who's been working so hard on this. And just a clarification, Ron, because when your draft went out, there was a few questions to me. So the 5.1 million at the top for revenue loss is how much we could utilize of money that doesn't have to fall in a specific bucket other than revenue loss, but the actual amount in the 11.5 million calculation is that 4.25 million underneath.
That's
so
correct.
If you add it all up, it comes to 11.5 using that 4.25, and the 5.1 is really just kind of the cap of where we could get to with those revenue loss lines. Just to clarify, there was some confusion.
You got it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Chimides.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing the presentation and for getting us to this point. I'm really excited about a lot of the projects that you mentioned, and I think they're going to really improve the services and the experience of our residents, but that also long-term might, save a lot of money and or help generate revenue. So that's pretty exciting as an opportunity to sort of really have a long-term impact on the community in addition to sort of the short-term emergency responses. I'm curious about what the plan is for sharing the more details of, you mentioned sort of like for example, the small business grants. I could imagine that going in a lot of different directions. And I'm wondering, I think for each one of those buckets, I would like to know more. And I assume that's going to come in a later stage, but what's the timeline for having some of those details?
Well, as I had just said, Michael Tucker is going to be presenting a proposal on the small business money to us. So once, if it looks good, it's something that we can share with all the supervisors. As Ron said, this is still a work in progress, and as this fleshes out and it becomes more solid, there'll be more details. Right now we're just sort of sort of categorizing money so that we have at least have an idea which direction we want to go in.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to understand is that this doesn't all have to happen at once. Like I said, we have until the end of 24 to allocate this money. So it is a slow process, and we may do just little sections at a time.
It's a good outline, very good outline going forward.
The best advice we received is slow down, because things are changing rapidly, and a year or 6 months from now, the guidance may change.
And the second half of the money hasn't come yet, so.
Yep.
The need may change also.
Yeah. Supervisor Adams?
Yes, thank you. And I just would like to second what Michael said. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for all of us. I am curious about affordable housing. I know that most of our surrounding counties have allocated funds for affordable housing. And I think most of our towns are feeling incredible pressure about the lack of availability of housing for working families. So I'm wondering if we've given any thought to how we might, particularly in view of the fact that we did a study and we have a frame or a plan, how we might address that issue.
I believe, Ron, correct me, it is being addressed through the, for lack of a better term, Cheryl Roberts committee.
Yes, it is, Matt. That's our next meeting. As I'm leading a finance group with PJ and I for that, and our next topic is housing. Okay, and how's a better way of managing that and so on going forward. So that is a big piece of what Cheryl wants to do for that project right there is housing.
But I thought Cheryl's piece was transitional and homeless housing. And so I thought it was limited to those two buckets.
Well,
And,
I don't know.
and I'm thinking about working families. I mean,
Mhm.
so I'm just wondering if we're open to entertaining that as a discussion going forward, particularly because this is a draft.
I would say yes. I think we could have that discussion. I do know that Bob Gibson has some ideas along those lines as well.
That would be great.
So. Okay. Supervisor Holding?
Yeah, I would like to second Brenda's idea. I think the money set aside for transitional and detox and homeless housing is very important. But as we've talked about many times in a lot of our subcommittee meetings, especially about employees and retention, not just for the county, but for local businesses. And one of the major things blocking people from being able to move here and live here and work here is affordable places to live. So I reiterate Brenda's point, and it's not something I had thought of before on the committee, that maybe we look at a separate bucket that has to do with affordable housing. And Michael, maybe you can speak. Didn't Hudson recently in the last 3 years work on or is working on affordable housing? And maybe we could look to Hudson's model for the process that they started.
I just would like to add, and I've said this previously when we've talked about this, that when you look at that category for transitional homeless under the, that one area that Ron had, that's basically seed money. There's no way that we're going to be able to fully fund, the homeless housing or the detox center or whatever. So that, I mean, and it's the same thing for affordable housing. That 11.5 million isn't going to go that far or whatever portion. So, we need to look at that. And I think that's going to be accomplished. And I think Ron and I had this idea, working with developers, seeing what grants are available. There's a variety of things that we have to look at for affordable housing.
Yeah, we're kind of looking for a public-private partnership and seed money to start with. We did discuss that, so.
Yeah.
Supervisor Mia has his hand up, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Mia.
Yeah, I'm agree with the Brenda Adams. Housing issue is the biggest issue in the county and especially Hudson. So all affordable housing. People are move out from this county and everything. They cannot live, they cannot afford it. So we can do something about affordable housing that's better for the county. I think so. Agree with Ben Adams. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Did I see your hand up, Supervisor Chimides, or did you put it down again?
Yeah, I was just gonna add to the conversation. I think part of what the work we're doing with the SIM group, the Cheryl Roberts group, is for the transitional housing or housing for people who don't have homes. And part of that is that the county's already expending a lot of money on emergency housing or on services for people. If they had better housing, might be able to save services. So some of that idea is that if we're spending money up front, it actually might create some cost savings over the long term while providing more effective services. And I think it's a different sort of like economic equation for workforce housing. But I think that the frame that Tister was mentioning is that the city of Hudson is completing an affordable housing development plan. And my understanding is that the CEDC is sort of on the county's behalf, is basically working with the same partnership we did Patterns for Progress. The city worked with Patterns for Progress to create this development plan. And CEDC is then going to hire Patterns for Progress to do a corresponding county affordable housing development plan, where the plan would identify a couple priority locations in the county that would have sewer and water, and that would be good locations for a development with a private developer. And so that's a good first step. But I also think the project would be a lot more viable if we had some money set aside to either help with some of the upfront soft costs or upfront development costs, planning costs, or to sort of offset some of the development costs. So I do think that we'd be much more likely to create that sort of workforce housing if we had some money set aside. But I also agree with you, Chairman, that we're not gonna be able to cover the full cost of development, but it could be the difference maker of getting a developer to do a project in the county.
Yeah. Our next meeting, Mike, is next Wednesday, by the way.
I got it on my calendar this time.
Okay.
Supervisor Hoatling.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly acknowledge Congressman Delgado and our colleagues in the federal government that made this funding possible, both for the county and for all of our towns. I think it's a really wonderful opportunity to navigate some of the impacts that COVID has had and some of the inequalities and inequities that it has brought out and brought to life. And so I'm very grateful to Congressman Delgado for fighting so hard for this funding, as well as all of our colleagues on the federal level. So thank you to everyone's hard work on that.
Okay, and as we move forward, and if the plan changes, or we can come back and brief the board on a regular basis. So
thank you,
Ron and PJ. Thank you. So next on the agenda is I'm going to ask the clerk read the resolutions.
Okay, resolution 371 of 2021 to 390 of 2021 by Supervisor Leader.
Chairman, I would like you to consider the resolutions 371 to 390.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 391 of 2021 to 399 of 2021 by Supervisor Benvenuto.
Mr. Chairman, I submit these resolutions for adoption.
And I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 400 of 2021 to 415 of 2021 by Supervisor Chimides.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 416 of 2021 to 419 of 2021 by Supervisor Collins.
Mr. Chairman, I introduce these resolutions for adoption.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 420 of 2021 to 426 of 2021 by Supervisor Metler.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Eldridge, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, resolution 427 of 2021 through resolution 433 of 2021. 431 will need a 2/3 vote, but otherwise these would be sponsored by Supervisor Knott.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption and ask for a roll call vote on 431.
Second.
motion.
Collins.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, so we're going into do a 2/3 vote on resolution 431 of 2021, and this is for the various capital items in and for the County of Columbia, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $5,211,000,000 and authorizing the issuance of a $5,211,000 bonds of said county to pay costs thereof. So Supervisor Basson,
Yes.
Weigelt, Leader, Supervisor Leader.
Yes.
Okay. Benvenuto,
Yes.
Stats, Adams,
Yes.
Metler,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Eldridge,
Yes.
Fury,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Begonia, Sterling,
Yes.
Mia,
Yes.
Chimitas,
Yes.
Mussman,
Yes.
Scalera,
Yes.
Guzzi,
Yes.
Hoatling,
Yes.
Morel,
Yes.
Knott,
Yes.
Skoda.
Yes.
3299 A's, 586 nays. The resolution passes, and that's it for the resolutions, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, do any supervisors have any business to bring before the board? Supervisor Chimides?
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize after election day, everything I heard about the process of voting and the Board of Elections was really smooth. And so I both want to thank all the hard workers of the Board of Elections who made that happen, but also sort of recognize the work that the board itself did to sort of make this happen. That, a few years ago, I think we had a lot more issues at the Board of Elections on election day. And we made a lot of changes, both management wise, but also really significantly increased the funding to that department to make sure that they could run a good election. And I think that's so important for our county. And just want to recognize the positive changes that have happened.
Thank you. I agree, by the way. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay. First of all, I want to thank all our veterans, both with us and those who have passed, for their service to our country. As you know, tomorrow is Veterans Day. And prior to adjourning, I would like to take a moment of silence for Deputy Bernard Roberts, who was a deputy sheriff for the Columbia County Sheriff's Department, who passed away, unfortunately, due to COVID. So if we could take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. And if we can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, Patsy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Everyone have a nice Thanksgiving. I'm sure we'll see everybody next week during the committee